Operational efficiency means that everything kind of runs seamlessly from the bottom up. I don't necessarily deal with the junior team, but the operational efficiency does start from there. So if things are going wrong at the bottom, and that starts with your deliveries, or you've got problems with your junior team in terms of how they're being trained and operated, it all kind of filters up rather than filters down. And ultimately it starts to affect the bigger stuff, like your kind of revenue. You're not being able to operate properly because of these small things, and it affects the business in their head. So for me, it's about making sure that across the board, everybody is trained correctly on the procedures, and we have some very good procedures in place here, so it's about constant training, constantly updating, making time in the day to make sure that you're communicating this to your team, because what tends to happen is you get lost in the melee of the business, and it's busy and there's orders coming on, and that's obviously very important, but without reiterating the efficiencies, that gets affected, right? And it's about having that kind of vision to make sure that you take time, say, right, okay, let's step out of this for an hour, out of the business. Let's look at this, what can we do better? Are we following these procedures? Oh, maybe we're not. So we've gone slightly off, and then we'll refocus on that, and then everything else will run more smoothly.
So we've got a kind of loose induction program. There's all the kind of standard stuff that you have to do, like the kind of health and safety procedures and whatnot. But really, particularly in the kitchen, it's more about just kind of getting in and getting your hands dirty, really. People tend to start on one section, either pastry or larder, because they're the sort of quote unquote easiest sections, or at least there's a sort of different workload that's required. It's more about kind of forward planning than kind of cooking in the moment. So people will tend to spend their first chunk of time on either pastry or larder and use that time to like get to grips with the kitchen, understand the way we work, but also understand like the kind of flavor profiles and even things like suppliers, who we get what from, what kind of documentation is required, all that kind of stuff. And then when people get settled in, they will then sort of move around the sections and sort of complete all the sections over the course of about 6 months to a year, I suppose. We put a lot of energy into getting across the way we want to work, the kind of attitude we want to see in the kitchen. There's no like shouting and swearing here. It's, we're adults and human beings, and treat one another with respect. But I think, which is important anyway, but also I think it helps, you achieve what you need to achieve in the day. We also work as a team, so whilst you're on a section, you're responsible for your own stuff, but equally, you're there to help out others when you need it. I think there's a fair amount of fluidity in the team generally. I want all the team to be proficient in everything, ideally. I mean, obviously they're not going to be proficient in everything to begin with, but that's certainly the end game. There'll be a lot of kind of mentoring and guidance from the senior members of staff to the junior members of staff.
It's difficult when you guys come in, and if they're quite novice, that's sort of movement in the kitchen, that everybody's in sync. It's difficult to get. Some people just have it naturally. It takes time, but it's practice. As I say, some people are naturals and some people aren't. When I look at some of the chefs and the way that they move and the order they do things, they need training on that, because it's the wrong way round, and that's what gets them very much in trouble in services, and then they get stressed because of it. So, doing things in the right way at the right time alleviates that stress, and ultimately the food is better.